Pancho has actually commenced his professional life as an architect at the end of World War II, when the little city of Lourenço Marques grew into a large capital city for Mozambique in Africa. He has conceived more than 500 buildings in 25 different styles. A considerable amount of these projects have been built, demolished, and also altered. It is amazing to see that many of them have actually been preserved. And when I visited Pancho a couple of weeks ago in Sintra, we looked at the map which somebody has published in Maputo of more than 200 of Pancho's buildings, which one can visit today. It's an extraordinary map of really a city within the city. So all the buildings Pancho has designed are a city for themselves. Pancho lives very quietly in a village in the mountains of Sintra, in Portugal, in an absolutely magical house, which is somehow the definition of a Gesamtkunstwerk, I would say, because he's a painter, so it's full of his own paintings. He's an architect, it's full of his maquettes. He's a sculptor, so it's full of his sculptures. But there is also a lot of maps, because he has been collecting maps for a long time. So there's not only the mapping of his research, the mapping of his own work, but there's also the collection of his maps. Among the many things, Pancho has also been a member of Team 10, which ties it in very much with Kaderatia and his lecture earlier today. He has also obviously contributed a lot to this idea of an African metropolis, and that ties it in very much with what David Ache has just presented us. I think what makes Pancho's work so visionary and important for our time is that very much it is what Edouard Glissant is saying, that basically at the moment when globalization is more and more present with its homogenizing forces, we have different possibilities to cope with that. I can still be longer with the introduction. How much more time do we need? Okay, so I just should continue to talk. As soon as the images are ready, you will give me a sign, right? So Edouard Glissant always says that basically the homogenizing force of globalization can be resisted actually either by resisting globalization completely, but that makes us lose the global dialogue, or by having a global dialogue which produces different. And Pancho's work is a wonderful example because he has actually engaged in producing difference and has produced all these different buildings whilst actually introducing modern architecture, a very specific form of modern architecture into Mozambique. A very, very warm welcome to Pancho Guedes.
The year of 1825. I was born 100 years after that. I'm now 85 years old. This is the island of Mozambique before the Portuguese messed it up. They've already messed up one end with their enormous fortress. A map by a Dutchman, Leen Schouten, who actually, Europe in the 16th century was enormously open. You were either a Catholic or a Protestant. So there's a Dutchman who travels and works for the Portuguese, and he's collecting maps. And then he goes back to Holland and publishes this map of Mozambique Island with a town. And this is an English map when they decided to map their empire, which was going to absorb the whole world. That's again Mozambique Island. And Mozambique Island in other lesser publications. And there's the fortress, an enormous fortress the Portuguese put up, which was besieged 3 times by the Dutch. And they gave up and went to Cape Town. And then somebody else took over. This is the plan of the fortress of Saint Sebastian, who was then the king. And the map of the island from 1755 by Thaumaturgo de Brito. It's got the fortress, and it's beginning to be a great map. This is a copy of the map made by my wife, Dory, and I. And there's an English engraving by an English explorer, and that is the palace and the church of São Paulo on Mozambique Island. And again, in the late 18th, and as it was about 1960. And now I've selected a town, and out of this drawing, I've some buildings that I survey, I play with, and I have got documentation of the elevations. A view of 3 palaces who are now controlled by Dutch firms, English firms, German firms. And Lynn Schoten's drawing, I've extracted and copied it, and he actually shows the first fortress of the Portuguese. Lynn Schoten, when he got to Holland, actually drew the island wrong. That little thing that sticks out from the island should be on the other side of the island. And there's a plan done by a Portuguese, Thaumaturgo de Brito, from 1755, from which I work. It's a copy of the plan done by my wife and I. All the palaces, all the buildings on the island were done by Indian plasterers from Dio, and they were strongly ornamented until the neoclassical phase came, and all those decorations were rubbed out. There's one of the surviving decorations. Maybe they were short of scaffolding. All the houses had little verandas on the roof for the cool breeze, and also to watch for the ships coming in. And the windows, there was no glass. The windows were made out of little pieces of mother of pearl. And the little chapel of Nossa Senhora do Baluarte, which was there before the fortress got finished. When Lynn Schoten came, they were building the big fortress. Then I'm on to another island, the island of Ibu in the Quirimbas, north of Mozambique. And it's especially the island of Ibu that I'll show you. This is how you arrive on the beach, and there's the back of all the warehouses. It was at one stage a city for the Companhia do Niassa. And that is the plan of the city. And it says the bairro dos negros entre as palmeiras and the fortress. And the chapel inside the fortress, and the plan of the fortress at Ibu. These plans are quite wonderful by comparison that the plans we make now on computers, they're no longer artworks. The plans that were done by hand and imagined are for me much greater. The bells that never came to the chapel in the fortress, and the Forte de Sant'Antonio if the city became besieged, and one of the streets of colonnades at Ibu, and another street of colonnades at Ibu, and a detail of a double house, and the column which forms part of the style of Ibu, all these verandas, whether they're shops or houses, or the same building, often both shop and house, and garage. And a plan, and last slide, a plan of Lorenzo Marques, which was only built last century, which was a very small village before gold was discovered in Johannesburg. And the red dots are buildings are built in that town. And most of those buildings are incorporated on this beautiful drawing that a student did when I left being professor of architecture at the University of the Witwatersrand. Thank you.